36 of ZenMadman's nutty Pot Limit Omaha journey. I almost said potty nut limit Omaha. I don't know. Anyway, welcome to ZenMadman's nutty Pot Limit Omaha journey, day number 36. I am checking the big blind and checking it twice and checking it thrice, and oh, we're just going to fold this time. So, here we are in a table that is filled up very rapidly. I think it was three-handed when I joined it, and now we're already full. So that'll happen, right? These games can take a moment to get rolling, and then once they do, the people roll on in. Like, nobody wants to play heads up, and that's like, oh, you're three-handed. Let's play four. Let's play six. Let's play... Oh, you're full. So, what are we up to? Same old, same old. You know, just gonna focus on the hands at hand, chat with the chatters, and review some hands at the end. Half pot bet. I'm curious about these monotone boards. In no limit, I think half pot is often going to be a good sizing for them for a C bet. There's often a lot of checking that goes on. In pot limit Omaha, because you either have a flush or you don't ever get to make a flush, I would imagine there might even be more checking, because it's like this looks like a board with a lot of draws, but it's like, wait, there's not a lot of draws. There's only the Broadway wrap, and so you're only drawing to a straight, which isn't very good. So like two pair and sets and stuff are boat draws, essentially. So the only thing people really can draw to make anything remotely nutty would be a boat. So two pair or a set, or even one pair to make a runner boat. So yeah, I'm interested to get into some sort of solver output in those spots, which is not to say that the solver is necessarily going to tell us exactly how we should play against, you know, these cats, but it's going to give some guidance. King, king, jack, 8 double single suited. You know, I have a king high suit. The jack connects to the king. The 8 connects to the jack. Seems like a pretty clear open in the hijack. We're certainly not playing all of the single-suited kings, but being suited to the king is nice, and the other cards simply not being totally worthless is nice. You know, the jack and the 8's connectivity is diminished by the fact that there's a king, and we make a king-high straight when the jack-8 would make a queen-high straight, but the jack-8 can still make a jack-high straight, which would be the nuts. So there's three nut straight potentials with that combo. Here, how many nut straight potentials are there? We can make 7 high, 8 high. Well, we're gonna... I don't know about this. I don't know. A king jack with a suit seems nice. The 7 and the 5 have, you know, they connect. Being suited only to the 7 doesn't seem great. And actually, auto folding this hand, is this wrong? No, I think this seems fine. I think King 10 4-3 is significantly worse than King Jack 7-5. I mean, the 7 and the 5 are higher than the 4 and the 3. How many nut straights can the 4 and the 3 make? 5 high and 6 high, right? 7 high is not the nuts. And then the King 10 can make the same, you know, King high and Ace high. So I think just having an idea of like what nut straights you can make is of some utility, right? We can kind of memorize just what combos we play in what spots, but there are so many possible configurations of PLO hands, combined with there's a whole bunch of different pre-flop situations. That's a little hard, so sort of building heuristics and building a feel for like what components of the hands, like what sets a particular hand apart from another. There was one where, like, was it a small pair with, I don't remember what it was, but there's something where like Jack 10 or Jack 6 and 10-6 are both folds, but like Jack 5, 10-5, and like Jack 7 and 10-7 are all hands that get played. It's like this weird little sliver. I'm trying to remember what the other two cards were, though. It's not very useful if I don't know that. Having an ace is, you know, a positive feature of this hand, and there's not too many others besides that, so we will let it go. I mean, it's not suited to the ace, it's suited to the 7. Thanks for the follow to Kozel McQueen, or Kozel McQueen. I'm not sure exactly how the first part of the name is pronounced, but I imagine McQueen is McQueen, similar to Steve McQueen, I guess. And all right, so I have a suited ace, I have a pair of nines, and the three like goes with the ace. I think in a multi-way situation, I can actually play this. I don't like having the third card of the suit because these nut diamonds are a big part of my value. This is a decent bluffing combo, right? Because I'm double blocking the nuts. The only downsides are I feel like a lot of people are going to have some like two pair or set combos. Those are squarely in the ranges. And hands like king, queen, ace, king, queen, which I am blocking a little bit, I think are going to like not run away in terror if I bet. So I'm just going to check fold. But if it had checked through and then the turn were some sort of a brick, I think I could turn this into a bluff at that point, as there aren't going to be as many streets to come. So people with just like a bear king queen or ace queen, you know, whatever type hand, are going to be more apt to fold. And I think I could sell people on the notion that I had check to the razor, going for like a check raise or something. Even though I think leading this board would be a fine option for ways it would make some sense with a hand like the flop nuts. Now this player's betting. They go pot, pot. I would really like to see a showdown, but I think there's a reasonable chance we're not going to get one. This other player feels like, I don't know, like maybe they have an overpair and they're just getting really sticky with it. We know nobody had the nut flush draw on the turn, and they fold. So it feels like maybe like an ace king queen type job, maybe king high diamonds to go with it, something like that. I doubt any sort of made hand wanted to call that turn and then fold that river. They could have also had something like a set that didn't want to bet, but wanted to see the next card and try and boat up. Unclear. A little wheel board. 6-4 could be possible for either of these players, but is probably less probable than ace-4, which is still a straight. You know, probably not a lot of straight draws on the flop. That would be a 4 with a 2, a 3, or a 5. It's a raised pot, so people aren't going to have a lot of 2x, 3x in their range. And the in-position player was the pre-flop raiser, I believe, right? Because the player on my left was the big blind, I think, because I was the big blind the hand before. Another potting, so they're basically repping like ace-ace, I guess. I don't think a straight really makes much sense there, and I don't think anything less than a straight makes that much sense either. They could have also flopped a set and bet and then been like, oh, I don't like the turn card, and who knows. We shall fold. The low jack gets to raise to 450 instead of 350 because there was an extra $1 posted. So far, they've been fairly loose and not that aggressive, so I would imagine that they have a fairly strong range at this point. We get a full pot bet from them. We've seen a lot of pot-sized bets, so that's something to keep an eye on, that perhaps from this player a pot-sized bet does not indicate as much strength as it might from another player, and that would be useful information. Now, we don't have any confirmation of that. We just have kind of a sense like, okay, they've been potting it a fair amount, and that could be legit, or it could be, you know, a little extra aggro loose with the pot-sized bets. So like, if I raise and they call, and we're gonna 3-bet here, this might not be the worst flatting combo actually, but I don't super want to flat and then have the. I'm gonna mark this after because I'm trying to kind of identify those spots where I'm gonna play my aces other than just straightforward, you know, 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet, get the chips in. Not that I think it's necessarily super important, particularly at this limit. All right, let's think about this board. This player's going to pot it, right? They're just potting it so much. I was going to say earlier that I forget what I was going to say earlier. I have a gut shot, not to the nuts. That would be a 9. I have an overpair, which is pretty strong. Stack to pot ratio with the player on my right is 1.5 to 1, but across from me it's 3 to 1. I'm blocking backdoor nut spades, right? I don't think I want to bet here. If I had nut clubs, I would definitely bet. Having non-nut clubs certainly is a little worse. Um, if if I were 1.5 to 1 with both players, or if I were heads up and just had the 1.5 to 1 stack to pot ratio, I would be inclined to get it in on that flop because it's hard to be drawing too bad, right? Hard to have equity that's too bad. Now this player's half potting it, which I think is a little interesting. I'm actually going to call this. The jack is a fairly poor card insofar as any jack beats me now. But let's see. I like not having the ace of clubs, right? They could have the nut flush draw on the turn. There's tons of straight draws they can have too. I don't really see any value here, and I don't see trying to bluff this player off a jack, so I'm just going to check it back and take the chips. So, oh, that was a terrible turn card for them. Wow, they flopped bottom two pair, and then they decided to bet the turn when they got counterfeit. And I could have folded. If I didn't have the flush draw and the gutter, I would have folded, I believe. Mostly I was thinking, all right, I've got a hand that has a reasonable chance of being good now and has a reasonable chance of getting there if my opponent doesn't have like a boat already. And unless they have quad jacks, I at least have two aces to a very strong hand where I could get the chips in. So I'm just going to say good morning to the chat. Any hands that are of interest, please let me know if you'd like me to mark them and throw them into the session review. I'm happy to discuss anything in further detail. Right now, I'm trying to pretty much focus in on every hand that I'm playing and every hand that's dealt, so not even just the ones I'm playing, although the last one I kind of let pass without much commentary. All right, so I've raised in the low jack. I got cold called by this person who seems to like to bet a fair amount. I'm blocking top pair. I'm blocking nut spades, right? So that's nice. I think three ways out of position, though, on a board like this, I'm just mostly checking range. And against a pot size bet, I'm not quite sure what I will do. If they just put out a half pot bet, though, I think I would call it. You know, this feels like it would be folding a lot of equity, but there aren't a lot of places my hand can go. There's so many bad turn and river cards. The pot size bet just makes it really awkward. I haven't, let's see, I've seen that half pot size bet was like a bluff, semi-bluff, whatever. I am going to fold. This is folding possibly a good amount of equity, and I will mark that one as well. The fact that that was three ways to the, wow, I guess I just get dealt aces every hand. It's also a lot easier to just like fold some aces when you just like get them again and again. So I think I've gotten dealt 7 aces in the last 4 hands. Hopefully someone will raise and we can, you know, get a good amount of money in pre, or not. Maybe this person will just fold and we just take it down. If they were to raise and I re-raise, then we're going to have 18 in the middle if they call. And, all right, so we're just going to have 6 in the middle. So the SPR isn't going to be super shallow. It would have been pretty shallow in the other case. I think I marked the other hand, right? I did, yeah. So I'm going to talk about all these aces hands. Here I block top pair. I have an overpair. I have backdoor diamonds. Stack to pot ratio about 7-ish to 1. I think checking back. Maybe I want to bet this. Kind of feels like maybe a bet, but if they have a 10, they can't just get the money in by going bet. Now that they check, again, I'm going to bet. And if you trap me with a 10, like, congratulations, well played, nice hand. It's sort of uncredible for me to have a really strong hand here now, unless, like, I flop quad 10s or something. If they have a 10, they should feel pretty good, insofar as I probably don't have, like, I guess I could have, like, 6-6. I have a jack that's blocking boats, right? So I think this could be just like a bare 10 fairly frequently. My line was fairly transparent. I do have diamonds. I think diamonds are going to be good a fair amount of the time, and an ace is almost always going to be good, like unless they flop quads. Ace looks pretty good. I think that they have a 10 pretty often here. If they have 10-10, then just like hats off. You know, we have a 2-to-1 SPR now. I'm just going to put it in, and if they have quads, I mean, actually having the jack in my hand at this point, I kind of don't like, because now I'm blocking Jack 10, I'm blocking Jack Jack. It makes them have 10-10 a little more often. I think they probably had a 10, and I gave them a pretty gross beat. Let's take a look. What does it say they had? They did have a 10. They had Queen 10, 5, 3. So I had some number of diamonds. A jack would have also been good. That's an important thing to consider. And then diamonds that weren't a Queen 5 or 3. So they have a lot of my cards covered. I'm going to actually, let's see, pop that hand up. We're going to say review. And I think I might have played that fairly poorly. We're going to view that. And let's see. I want to make a note on this hand. I think it's not quite as easy as it should be. They could make it easier to launch the replayer. Or I could just know how to do it better if it's not that hard. Let's see. I just want to write down exactly what they had so that when we review, we can look at the equity, like hand versus hand. All right, 10, single pair of 6s, single suited, the 10 and the 8. This is potentially playable. I think it's probably a little light, but I'm definitely not sure. And we'll look it up after the session. Let's say Queen of Spades, 10 of Clubs, 5 of Spades, 3 of Spades. Okay, we'll save that. And then we will examine that hand after the session. Because I'm not so confident. I'm not so confident that I played it well. I don't really like how I played it. But we'll take a look at it. All right, this hand, ooh, some money went in. Some money went in pre-flop. This must have been like raise, 3-bet, 4-bet, right? From the out of position player. Now they're potting it. I mean, they're going to have a lot of ace-ace. They're going to have some rundowns that smash the 10. The other player gets it in with kings, which, I mean, I understand blind versus blind, but I'm not sure about king, king, queen, 3 as a 3-bet there. I'm kind of curious about it. Let's see. Oh, no, that's not what I meant. What I mented? Oh, sometimes the words get weird. I don't know. All right. I will review that hand. Pre-flop. Pre-flop. That's what we're looking for. Pre-flop. Let's see. What is this? This. All right. Yeah, that king, king, queen, 3 with a single suit. I don't think that's a great 3-bet hand, big blind versus small blind. Being able to take a flop in position there. Getting 4-bet seems like it would be somewhat of a disaster. As it turned out to be, they stacked off against aces. And while aces aren't necessarily the majority of the range, having the option to play that in position, I think it would be better if it's big blind versus button, because then at least there's a chance to sort of mitigate the positional disadvantage, as I like to say. Whereas in position, there's nothing to mitigate. One need not mitigate when one has the positional advantage. One does not wish to mitigate oneself. All right. Okay. Let's refocus. Had some exciting hands that might have been played poorly by myself. King, Jack, 6-3, like, no. The 6 and 3 aren't good. Being suited to the 6-3 isn't great. We have a limped pot here. King 10, 10-8 seem pretty reasonable for a limper or a checker. The big blind has been playing very tight so far. They're probably running fairly cold. Though with this small stack, maybe they're just like a short stack, pick up some aces and get the chips all in sort of player. I've certainly felt that mentality myself before in like big live Pot Limit Omaha games. It's not the most profitable, but I think in a loose game, you can probably make some money doing that. Just wait for a big pre-flop hand and just like rip it. That sounds like a frog. Rip it, rip it. Okay. I don't know. It's an odd morning, eh? Yeah. What is it? Today's Monday? Oh, Monday. I mean, Monday doesn't really have that much meaning for me, except that I started this challenge on a Monday morning. And so every week actually does begin on a Monday for me. So this is the beginning of week 6 of doing this exact same exercise. And I think it's gotten just very comfortable for me, which is maybe good and bad. I think it being comfortable is nice because I just flow into it, right? I wake up, I do whatever I have to do in the morning, and then today I actually woke up when I was originally planning to wake up. Usually I wake up earlier because if I wake up a little while before it, like my plan is to wake up at 9, and so if I wake up at 8:30, I'm like, oh, I can't go back to sleep because then I'll like feel bad when I wake up at 9. So today my alarm actually did go off and woke me up, but I had gotten plenty of sleep. This hand 10-9-8-8 rainbow, rainbow not so good, but high level of connectivity. I've got a pair, I've got a set, I've got an open-ended straight draw, I got a blocker to the flush draw. So I'm pretty jazzed with this hand. Do I want to be raising this? I think I'd rather pop the turn. I'd rather pop a lot of turns. Um, I don't have a problem with raising here. I think that's fine. A queen, an 8, 7, a deuce, a jack. These are all really good cards that can come off. If a diamond comes off, then I'll just flat. So I'll just flat. I did say a 7 was good, but this isn't such a good 7. Now I've got a boat draw, right? I've got a straight, and I've got a blocker to the flush. So I'm definitely going to call, and if I spike a boat, hurrah. If I don't, now I have to decide, do I want to bluff catch with this? I actually don't have to decide that at all because my opponent has checked to me. I think they can check some smaller flushes. They could check something like a set of jacks that they played this way for whatever reason. I don't see a lot of value betting a straight here with the flush on board, even with the flush blocker, so I'm going to check, and sometimes I'll win. And yeah, so if we look at that, like how much equity did they have on the flop? They had 13%. So I'm happy letting them take one card. And even though the board didn't run out the way I wanted it to, sure, if they had like the ace of diamonds, maybe they could have just bombed the river and I end up folding. But because I was in position, I had middle set, and that gives them some top pair. If I raise that flop, let's see what happens. They have ace, ace, queen, 5. Like, they just fold that hand, right? Whereas here, there were so many good turn cards. That was like a medium turn card, right? It wasn't great because all their flush draws just got there, but I did have a flush blocker, and I did make a straight. So if they had a hand like Jack Jack that they'd flopped set over set me on the flop, I'd actually got there. So I don't I don't hate my line there. I like it better than the other one where I binked a boat on the river. I think we should call that a lifeboat when when we're like in a hopeless scenario, and then we bink a boat, and that saves us. I don't know. I like making up terms. Some of them stick, some of them don't. Feel free to use them at your discretion, and should you see fit as to give attribution, always appreciated, but not necessary. I'm not trademarking the low jack. It probably is already trademarked in a different setting. Okay, nut spades. That's probably gonna win. It's probably gonna win. Um, let's see. What did the other person have? The other person had a 9 high flush, and they flopped like a wheel wrap, and what was the river bet? The river bet was pot, right? Yes. Okay. So, not being suited to the ace, I'm going to fold this. If I were suited to the ace, I think I would flat. And I would have a glorious flop here with a nut flush draw. But, the thing about, yeah, so that player was potting with the nuts. So, we've seen so far, we've seen pot bet with nuts, half pot with draw, basically, right? And I'm going to fold this hand. So I saw them pot a number of hands early on in the session and was remarking, maybe they're potting a lot, right? Maybe they're kind of full of it. That's still possible, but I've specifically seen them half pot the turn with like maybe it was a double gutter and bottom two pair, but top pair had paired. So it was definitely a bluffy spot. And then here they've potted with the nuts. So that doesn't tell us when they pot, they always have the nuts, and when they half pot, they never have the nuts. But I would say it tells us that when they pot, they are perhaps more likely to have the nuts, and when they half pot, they are perhaps more likely to have some sort of bluff, which is what we would think in the first place. But having seen them make a number of pot-sized bets, it seemed there was a reasonable chance that the opposite was true, right? Some people will just use pot for all their bets and then half pot for like all their value bet bluffs. Value bluffs? Value bets. I have a nice value bluff, a clip in there somewhere, but generally that's not a thing. Although I think I found an instance where it possibly could be, but because of blockers, right? There are spots where people should fold a particular hand strength because it doesn't block anything you want to block, and then call with a different hand strength because it does have blocking properties, but that different hand strength is actually lower than the other one. I think we just got some info from the last hand too, but I sort of missed it because I was talking about value bluffs and whatnot. Not really anything nutty there, though. I mean, nut flush, but on a paired board. Not really the nuts. All right, so the two players on my left certainly appear to be at least attempting to play seriously. And I shall not comment on whether or not I believe they're doing so successfully. I mean, I don't really have much to say about it. The one player did, that was the king, right? So maybe they have a little over aggressive three betting in some spots. Let's see, does this reopen the action? It does not. I mean, no, it does not. So this player with the 1956 can't actually jam. They had the option to, but they were unable to. I'm sure that they would have, could they have, but the player behind them did not have enough more to constitute a full raise. So now they're just putting it in here. The SPR is like 1 to 10. They flopped a draw with some stuff, and they made their pair of jacks and quad queens. Quads are good. Quads are good. So they won the side pot, this fairly tight player. Let's see what, so ace jack 10-9. So as we can see, like, their stats look very tight, but that's not a super tight three betting hand, right? That's a fairly standard appropriate three betting hand, I believe. Depending on what they were squeezing from the small blind. I mean, it makes some sense, right? But it's not like only aces, right? So even though we see, I mean, now their three bet is like 11, but that's 1 out of 9 tries. But they had been playing 7-7, so they'd been playing very tight in terms of percentage of hands they played. But I think it's now apparent that they probably were just folding a lot of junk. They probably weren't getting a lot of hands. So as always, we don't want to draw huge conclusions from small sample sizes. For instance, this month I've been running very well. I do not want to draw a huge conclusion from that sample size. This is not a huge sample size. And a huge conclusion would be like that was my true win rate. I'm completely certain it's not, because it's very high. And I have a lot of work to do to improve my game. I do feel more confident that I'm actually a winning player in these stakes right now, even making potentially large mistakes. I think you can make large mistakes when people are playing 100% of their hands, right? That's just, you're allowed to make big mistakes if your opponents make much bigger ones more frequently. So I think running really good has helped me not be in my head in terms of like being self-conscious and worrying like, oh, am I beating the game? Like, I'm pretty confident that at these stakes, I mean, you just look at the games, right? This player across from us has a 55. They're playing more than half their hands. That can't be right. There's 6 players at the table. You shouldn't play more than half your hands. But then the player on the right is playing like almost twice as many hands, right? They're playing almost literally every hand. Queen 9-7, Queen 9-8-7, got the 3 cards connected. If I was suited to the queen, I think I would pop this one. But I'm not, so I won't. Generally, I would use my cutoff raising range here. You could say, oh, well, this player's like pretty loose, so maybe you want to get in there with a few more hands. I think marginal hands against that player are going to be a little more tricky to play because my sense is that they're fairly aggro post flop. And more passive players, I'm comfortable playing more of those kind of marginal hands. Against players who are a little more aggro, I really want to come with a little more equity, more robust equity, and just let them kind of like crash like the waves on, I don't know, on the rocks. Except the rocks get eroded, so that's a terrible metaphor. So yeah, maybe they're the rocks. I don't know. Maybe I'm the waves. I've always thought of myself as more of an airbender, but you know, whatever. Even though like all of my astrology signs are like earth based, like bull and horse. Okay, king 6 3 deuce. Well, it has a 3 and a deuce in it, so it's probably not very good. It's so pretty though. It's like all suited. I think a Omaha variant for a live game would be like if your cards are all suited, there's like some bonus if you get to showdown. Like maybe you need like a 4 card straight flush. There's like some, you know, kind of like a bad beat jackpot, except you don't need to actually have a bad beat. You just need to play the hand and get to showdown. So it like encourages people to play, you know, bad combos. I don't know. I also think in Omaha, if you give yourself the bad beat jackpot, you have the winning hand and the losing hand, and they're, you know, both qualifying. You should just scoop the jackpot. I think that should be a thing. I did flop an open-ended double straight flush draw the other day. That was fun. Not really interesting from a strategical standpoint. Sevens with a king 9 suited. This is a pretty good hand, like in the cutoff, I think. But up front, I do not think it makes the cut. Although, you know what? I think it might be closer than I think it is. So I'm going to tag it, and we're just going to do a little pre-flop checkup with that hand. So, yeah. Anyway, as always, should anybody have any questions or comments about any of the hands I'm playing, feel free to just type the whole cards in the chat box or in the comments down below on YouTube. On YouTube, just include a timestamp. It'll make it a lot easier to go back and reference the hand. You know, a lot of this session has been getting pocket aces and winning, or sitting around and watching these people duke it out. There's been a fair amount of action in the hands I'm not involved in. So, okay, 8 7 6 deuce with 2 suits. Like, the deuce is not a good card. I kind of like playing hands with the player on my right, and the player across from me I can't actually lose any money to at this point, besides like another $1.35. I flop top pair. I flop middle pair, a gut shot to the nuts, a backdoor flush draw. I'm certainly going to call against the player across from me because I just have enough equity to do so. And if the player on my right raises, then I think, you know, this is the downside with the check and call approach. But the upside might be I get away from it when I'm crushed. I wasn't really super crushed, but looks like aces held up. I think my equity on the flop there was pretty strong. Let's see. I mean, not like super strong. Oh, they had a 7 also. Yeah, so I basically just had my gut shot. I mean, it would have been strong against ace-ace. Right, what did they have to go with their ace-ace? They had a deuce and a 6. So my deuce actually would have been good, but they had one of them. What's going on? Okay, let's pop it up. Ace-king 10-7. Yeah, I'm suited to the king, but I'm small blind versus a limper. I don't think this is a board I'm going to be betting a lot in general with my raising range. I am going to have a fair amount of ace-4 because I'm going to play a lot of, you know, ace-ace, ace whatever, ace a couple Broadway cards with a 4, so it's pretty easy to have an ace-4 because I'm going to have the ace so often. I'm going to just keep checking, though. There's not really anywhere for this hand to go. I have the nut no pair, so if nobody else makes a pair, I win. Unless they make like a straight or something. But yeah, so now I have a pair of 7s. And again, I'm not blocking any of the straights, right? There's several straights. Now there's 3 straights that are possible. A 7 could win. If everybody just checks, my 7 could win. I'm not going to call a 3/4 pot bet with it, though. You know, I don't think too much thought needs to be given in a spot like this. Like, always, yes, think, okay, what could they have? Well, they could have 8-6 that just got there. They could have ace-4 that now they decide to put some chips in. Yeah, they have 8-6, which just got there. That was kind of like the most likely hand. I mean, we'll see what they had. Jack 10, 8-6 rainbow, right? So My hand was in very good shape pre-flop. The 9 is a bad card. It's like the worst card to have with Ace-5-5 Rainbow, and for that reason, I'm gonna fold. I think this might be one of those like sliver fold hands, which what I mean by that is it's in a hand class Ace-5-5 where almost any other card is gonna make that a raise, right? But the 9 is just so bad because it connects to the 5 to make a non-nut straight draw, but it doesn't connect to the ace. Any Broadway card, then at least I'd have two Broadways where you can make Broadway. Broadway's always the nuts when a straight's the nuts, right? It's always a nut straight anyway. And anything smaller than a 9 would connect better to the 5, or maybe be a wheel card that goes with the ace and the 5. Maybe with a 2 and a 3 we fold as well, but that's one that I'm curious to kind of, like, I feel like I can sometimes see the pre-flop charts in my head, and that 9 just, it feels like that's that one card that's going to be kind of cut out where it's like, no, we don't play this one. But we shall see. It's really nice to be able to get binary feedback from the pre-flop matrix. Link in the video description below. At some point, I'll have a link on Twitch. Hopefully, I'll be getting some affiliate links from Upswing Poker. I find that I mean the matrix has just been extremely helpful for me. I'm looking forward to trying out Vision on Run It Once as well. I'm not, shilling for any one site. This is interesting. I think it's a fold though. I recommend the tools that I use and I find useful, and I've found a number of things on Upswing useful, and in the past I've found a lot of things on Run It Once useful, and I used to use Stocks Poker, but that's not a thing anymore, and Deuce is cracked, which I think might still be a thing, but I don't think they have like new content. And I do think the game has changed so much that older content, like I made a lot of Limit Hold'em content back in the day, and I think there'd still be value in that content, but there'd be a lot less than there was at the time. All right, so we have a flush draw we have two Broadways. One of them has a flush draw. So as we can see, the flush draw had 66% equity on the flop. So they weren't deep, so it's not really a big deal. But if we look, having that, actually they had two, right? They had the flush draw, the direct flush draw in diamonds, and then they also had backdoor hearts. So they had, 2/3 of the money that went in, they're supposed to get out, like in EV, right? In the long run. So having just like a naked straight, you don't always want to just be like, oh, let's put all the chips in, because somebody can do that to you. And there were a lot of ways that the board could run out. That wasn't one of them. But there's a lot of ways the board can run out, and you can just get scooped when you think you're chopping. But if you have $11 in your stack, you can probably get it in with the nut straight. In this game. I mean, in 5 cent, 10 cent, maybe not. Alrighty. I wasn't really paying attention to this one. I was still thinking about content from the days of yore. I mean, the games were better in the days of yore. We didn't have solvers. We had Card Runners EV, where you would like make this really complicated tree and then run some things. And actually, I think we kind of came up with the idea of solvers, but didn't have the computer know-how to like really make them work. Ace King, I could have raised a combo like this, but with the 6 and the 3, here I'm going to bet. How much do I want to bet? I'm gonna bet this. I've got top and bottom pair, so I have some, possibility, right, to make the best hand should I be up against a flush. I also have the ace of hearts, so I know I shouldn't be getting raised, and that's a big component to like why I wanted to bet there. If I didn't have it, I'd probably check back. Whether that's correct or not, I'm not sure, but that's what I would do. All right, so queens, I was going to overlimp this hand, actually, I think. Against a raise, queens with a 10 and a 6, suited to the 10, out of position. I think this is just a fold. If you claimed that I could cold call this and play it profitably because I have two opponents who are, playing a lot of hands, I I'm not sure I would say you're right, but I wouldn't argue vociferously against you. I could certainly see that being the case. Counter arguments are, well, the player across from me isn't playing that many extra hands. They're playing too many hands, but not way too many hands. And the player on my right raised, and their raising range hasn't been super wide. So I think sometimes there's a lot of ego in these ideas that we can play these extra hands profitably because, like, oh, my opponents are so bad, I have to be able to play this profitably. Like, one of the reasons we want nice things to go with our queens is that when we flop a set of queens, we don't necessarily want it to be just a bare set, right? We want to have some backdoor flush draw, which here, I would have hit a backdoor flush draw. It would have been the 10, so I wouldn't be thrilled, but I think there's a reasonable chance that this hand is best. Slightly lower chance now that this player's decided to go ahead and bet. I suppose they could be betting some kind of a straight, but they probably have a flush. Often an ace-high flush because they raise pre, right? Or king-high. BuffyBot7 says, good morning. Good morning, BuffyBot. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the chat. Always nice when people say hello. It doesn't have to be anything, deep or poker related. Like, you're always welcome to just say hi. So, yeah. Thank you for stopping in and saying hi. And yeah, I think the stream has been pretty fun today for me in terms of just what's going on at the table. Like, I don't know. I think we've got a couple of active players. We've got like very different player types, right? The player on the right is very loose and pretty passive. The player across from me is pretty loose, kind of aggro post flop. Then we have this tight short stacker between the two of them. And then on my left, I've got a couple of people who I think are trying to play, kind of somewhat tight and well, but the player on my left is a little more aggro, and the other one seems to have it locked down more. But like, they might both truly have stats more like mine, 21-14, which is a little tighter than I usually run, because 42 hands is not a huge sample size, right? 1 or 2 hands that we raise or don't raise can make the difference there. So let's see, we're closing in on around 40 minutes, 42 minutes now. How is that? Yeah, okay, well, and I guess I'll get to the session review pretty soon, maybe after this orbit. How many hands have I marked? I've marked 7 hands. That's a considerable number. That's pretty good for a session review. So unless anybody really wants one more orbit, I can wrap this and then do a session review. All right, player on my right has open limps. We have a raise from the player behind me. They're in a pretty good spot to put in a decent number of raises, as I'm doing a lot of folding just because I'm playing the hands I play. The player on my right's doing a lot of limping, so they're going to have a lot of spots where they're in the button or the cutoff, and they can try and isolate this player, and then the player on their left is going to fold a lot, and even if they don't isolate the player on my right, they're going to get this 3-way pot where they're in position. So if I were them, I'd be very happy raising my buttons and cutoffs, trying to get this kind of 3-way spot. Again, I don't really want to open up my range a ton to do that, because I don't think those marginal hands are necessarily going to play great in these 3-way spots, but I'd be very happy to have, medium to high pocket pairs, run, connectivity, and ace-high suits especially. I think smaller flush draws are easy to overvalue when we're going to have a lot of multi-way pots, right? I think that's one of the hands components that changes the most in value, that goes down the most in value when we are like many ways. Because heads up, a jack-high flush or something is going to hold up a lot more often than like 8 ways or whatever. Chase the Ace 7 says, hello mate, how's it going? Great to finally be able to catch you. Good luck, good luck. Thank you. Thank you. So far, so good with the luck today. Chase the Ace, I've seen, we've chatted some on Kevin E. Poker's stream, which we'll check that out in probably at the end of this session. And but yeah, thanks for stopping by, saying hi. It's been a fun session so far. And okay, let's focus on this hand. Top pair, gut shot. No heart blockers, right? 10s are blocking a lot of the rundowns. I think this is a decent hand to c-bet, But, all right, I said it, so I'm going to do it. Uh, I usually check in spots like this. I'm really unhappy if I get check raised because I think I have a fair amount of equity. Now I'm double blocking the nut straight. How important is that against a player like this? Am I going to get, like, do I even really want to get fold that much? Do I want to pick off some bluffs on the river instead? It's tricky because I like my hand. I have some showdown value. I'm also very much blocking good hands. If I don't bet here, I'm not going to have a credible river bluff. But I think this player is maybe going to bluff too much on the river. Well, I don't have a credible river bluff here, having the nuts and all that. How much should I bet? Okay, they're going to have some busted flush draws. Can't get value from that. They're going to have some pair, maybe two pair on the river here. I think something like a half pot bet is reasonable. I'm trying to get called by like one pair, two pair. They probably had a heart draw that maybe I could have pushed them off on the turn. And if I had bet the turn, I think it would be a little easier maybe to sell the river as a bluff. I'm not sure. I mean, then 10-9 would be pretty credible. So let's play one more orbit. We'll play one more orbit. I'm going to mark that last hand as well and just talk about post flop there. So yeah. I definitely err on the side of checking too much. That's something I know about myself. And that's one of the reasons that, you know, I was talking through the flop and saying all the reasons why it was a good betting spot. And then I was hovering over check anyway. And why is that? I think it's because I really don't want to get check raised and get check raised off my equity. And that's a rational concern if all the things add up to, well, I really don't want to get check raised off my equity, and I think that's particularly likely, right? However, there it was like, well, I'm blocking top pair, which means I'm blocking top set and top two and top and bottom. I'm blocking wraps, so I should be less concerned about actually getting check raised because I'm blocking some of the check raising hands. Now, wraps aren't that. I would rather have a heart, I think. I want to be blocking you know, some like nut flush draws, but it's going to be like a nut flush draw with a wrap or nut flush draw with top pair. I think that's going to be doing a lot of the check raising there. And if I do get check raised, I don't know how I proceed in that spot. But as I was realizing it was more kind of fear-based and less logic-based, I decided let's just put the bet in. Here, I'm not going to put the bet in. I do have a flush draw, but I'm blocking my flush draw. I'm blocking smaller flush draws that other people could have. You know, I have one out to the stone cold nuts, 4 outs actually, any 7's good. But I'm going to fold anyway. It doesn't, like they full potted it on this board, and I just, you know, 4 outs facing a pot-sized bet doesn't really feel like something I need to continue with. Jacks with a 6 and a deuce. I have a suited 6. This is a pretty poor combo of jacks. Can I just over limp here? How often is this person going to raise? I mean, they've raised a fair amount overall. This is questionable. It doesn't feel good enough to raise. Small blind over limping is something that it's not like in the handbook, right? There's not like a solver answer for how much you should over limp the small blind. Now we can come up with one, right? We can program Monk or Solver and say, you know, make a 3-handed sim, say button, or it could be any position, but we just, in the solver, it's the button, and we say they're open limping this particular range, and we just force it, right? We lock it. And then we solve for what we do small blind. We still need to build a post-flop structure, basically, for how all the action can go post-flop, and that's still going to take up a lot of RAM. However, because there's only 3 players and one of those is node locked, it's going to be a little more manageable. I don't think I'm going to be able to run it on my computer, but if I were to upgrade my RAM, I could. Do I raise like all kings on the button? I don't think so. I think I fold kings that are this tragic. So I'm actually going to fold these truly tragic kings, and I will mark them. And just double check, like, I fold kings this bad, right? Like, these are like the nut bad kings, just about. Okay, the Ethical Panda says, in terms of flushes holding up, do you think it's fair to say the ace-high flush shows up far more often than other high ones. What I mean is it fair to say that if we have a king high flush with 3 people in the hand with me, right? So like four-handed, I should be more worried about someone having the ace than I should be worried that somebody has a king high when I have the queen high and the ace of that suit is on board. Yeah, so definitely, definitely. The people play ace X suited more than they play king X suited, right? I mean, there are spots where we can be like, oh, I have a suited ace, I can play this, period, right? Whereas just a suited king, we're generally going to need something else to go with it, which means there's going to be fewer combos. Not to mention the fact that there are actually literally fewer combos of king X suited than ace X suited. Because the ace can go with 12 other cards and the king can go with 11 other cards, right? So, yes, if there's an ace of a suit on board and you have the queen high flush, you are, I believe, in most circumstances, right? Obviously, there's always, oh, well, specific things about people's ranges. But in most circumstances, I'd say you are more likely to run into an ace high flush with a king high flush than you are to run into a king high flush with a queen high flush when like the ace is on board. I think that is correct. And an important thing to understand. And even more so, let's say you have the jack high flush and the ace and the king are on board, right? Well, the queen high flush is going to be even less likely than the ace high or the king high because there's fewer combos suited to the queen that people are going to play. Having said that, if we're in spots where there's a lot of, in 3-bet spots or 4-bet spots where we think there's going to be tons of double suited hands, then we should be pretty concerned about all the flushes because double suited, there's going to be a lot of flush combos. But yeah, like ace X suited is just so prevalent, and if you've got like a 5 or 6 way pot or something, right? Like somebody probably got dealt the ace, and there's a reasonable chance they got a suited kicker with it. All right, after the next hand or two, we're going to proceed to the session review. King Queen 5-3. This might be close-ish, actually. We can play a lot of King Queen suited, and the 5 and the 3 are connected. I think King Queen 5-4 suited to the king would be a raise from the cutoff. I don't know if I would ISO or if I would raise a hijack limper. ISO is more of kind of a fantasy in all right, so ace king with a 5 and a 2. I think the 5 and the 2 are just pretty bad. I have a third suited card, and one of those is the king to go with the ace. So I think this hand, not only do I get in my own way in terms of equity, but I also get in my own way in terms of playability because the king blocks those second nut flushes that I really want one of these players to have. And I will also tag that for pre-flop. And do I get to be the big blind here? No, right? It's going to be big blind only. Yeah. Okay. That's it for the session. We'll proceed to the session review. That's a very interesting question, the Ethical Panda, says BuffyBot. The Ethical Panda says, thank you. Actually, just says thanks. I'm misquoting here. Misquoting. I love to see the conversation, though. I love to see some interaction in the chat. Let's see. Replay all hands in report. We'll bring it up here. And I wish I could just take out the stream delay for this. I imagine there's got to be some way to do it that's like what you would do if like somebody if like something happened on the stream and you wanted it to not air, then you would like skip something, right? That's what they do in live things sometimes, I think. I'm not sure. But yeah, anyway. That's not what we're doing. So we don't have live interaction on these hands reviews, but we do have interaction. So quickly, what I am going to do is, oh, and I do think that's an interesting question, the Ethical Panda, and thank you for the question, and hopefully the response was of use. Okay, session review. Ace King 5 Deuce. How do I play this in the hijack? Do I raise it? Do I fold it? I wouldn't be surprised if it says to fold it. It's very close, and it is the deuce, right? Ace King 5 deuce. Single suited is fold in hijack. Ace king 5-3. Good suit is RFI call in hijack. So if I had ace king 5-3 and I had this extra club, right? Like if we just make the 2 of clubs a 3 of clubs here, but I have the king of clubs as well, I think I'm okay folding that as well, because the tri-suit, not only am I getting, I said it already, right? But whereas if I had ace 5-3 of clubs and then an offsuit king, I'd be more apt to play that. But I think all of those would be close. Whereas this is just a clear fold, and I fold, and we move along. King, king, 8 deuce. There's a limper and another limper. Oh, there's double limpers. So I think there's an argument to be made. Oh, you want to play kings against these limpers because you can flop top set and you can stack them. Okay, I hear you. Having said that, they're really bad kings. And so flopping top set is not going to give us robust equity. It's just going to give us top set. And we can actually even be behind on the flop with top set when it's the nuts, which is wild. But if the board's like king, queen, 4 with 2 clubs, say, and our opponent has ace, jack, 10 with 2 clubs, then I think we're actually behind there. So that's just a little bit for thought. Let's just see, do we play these kings, say even on the button, if it folds to us? And the answer is yes. We actually raise all of our king, except for when we have an extra king. So here, I'll say king, king, 8 deuce rainbow is RFI fold from button. And I'm sure that it's going to be a fold from other positions, though. Let's just look at the cutoff first to kind of prove to ourselves that, yeah, this is a clear fold. King, king, 8 deuce rainbow is clear fold from cutoff, right? So in general, with 1 limper, I'm going to use my cutoff range when I'm on the button. With 2 limpers, I'm going to use my hijack range. So if it's a fold in the cutoff, then it's going to be a fold in the hijack. Only fold king, king, rainbow with 9 deuce down through 3 deuce. 9-3 down through 3 deuce. Play king, king, 5-3 rainbow. All right, so basically there's a little square, and it's got like 9-3, 9-2, 8-3, 8-2, etc., down through 3 deuce, and we fold all of those in the cutoff. So I'm happy with this fold. We can move on, but I do think if you want to play that hand, it's probably not that bad. Basically just saying, hey, flop me a set, and let's go from there. All right, this hand, pre-flop, pretty straightforward, right? Really good hand pre-flop. On the flop, so my logical brain was saying, I'm blocking top pair. So first of all, I have top pair, top kicker. That's pretty good. It's not like the nuts or anything, but it's pretty good. That's number 1. Number 2, I have a gut shot to the nuts. So that's 3 outs to the nuts. Number 3, I'm blocking the wrap, right? So hand like king 10, king 10, 9, ace king 10, those are going to be harder for my opponent to have. And then I'm unblocking hearts. So the thing I didn't like about this hand was I was unblocking hearts, and I thought maybe I get check raised here a lot by a heart draw. If I get check raised, maybe I can call. I'm going to have 3 kings to the nuts. That's not a lot, but I do have top pair, top kicker, and depending on how the board plays out, maybe I can get to some showdowns anyway, and maybe my hand is good. So checking this back is mostly thinking, I really don't want to get check raised, right? And I'm not totally sure how much of that is a logical fear of, like a logical concern of I don't want to give up my equity by getting check raised versus an irrational fear of like, I don't want to get check raised. I don't want to get outplayed or something like that. Ultimately, I decided to bet half pot because I thought, all right, it's a decent flop for my range. I have a decent main hand, and I have some blockers to some things that might check raise me. And that top pair, top kicker, that functions both as a value hand, but also whenever we have top pair, we're blocking a lot of value hands that they can have, a lot of value check raises, right? And so queen, 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 jack, queen, 4, those are going to be less of our opponent's range because I have one of the queens. And because of that, if I do get check raised, they're going to be really heart heavy. and I might have some good call down spots if the board bricks off. So I like this bet here. I think it was the rational thing to do, and I felt the emotional pull towards the check button, and I rejected it. And I think I rejected it because logic dictated, no, this is a reasonable spot to bet. And after talking through all of that, I think that all makes sense. So here, now I have top pair, top kicker. I still have a gutter to the nutter, and I'm double blocking the nuts. And my opponent checks, and I'm thinking for a long time, right? And if I could get through this thought process faster, I might have gone ahead and bet. One of the reasons I didn't bet is I thought my hand is probably good already, so why am I bluffing? Repping a straight to get someone to fold a flush draw is a little odd. I think I could just mash pot here and get my opponent to fold a lot of equity, so I kind of like that. I kind of like that idea. I felt like I took too long, and I thought about all these different things I could do. What would I bet here if I had a straight, right? I think I'd usually pot it. I just pot it. Unless I had like a straight and nut hearts or a straight and a set or something, then maybe I half pot it because I've got this more robust equity. And so I think I can use both bet sizes, but mostly I think I'm going to be potting it when I value bet here. Because it's going to be pretty polar, right? I'm going to have the nuts or I'm not going to have the nuts. And if I don't have the nuts, unless I have like queen, queen, 10, 10 or something, I don't think I'm going to be betting very much for value with non-nut hands. So probably I should have just potted it here, but I check it back and then I bink the nuts on the river. My opponent checks and I think about how much to bet and I end up betting half pot. And I'm not crazy about this bet size. I think I could pot it because first of all, I have the nuts and it sucks that I'm blocking the second nuts, right? Like double blocking it. So it's harder for my opponent to really have a hand they really want to pay off a big bet with. But I think it would look maybe a little bluffy. So maybe there's some merit there. I also think there's some merit for a small bet size. In general, in position, I'm not utilizing that small bet size that much. Mostly I'm doing that out of position. But the bet size would be targeting my opponent's range, thinking this person's got some like queen, jack, queen, four, like maybe some king, jack type hands that they're really not too thrilled with. Maybe even just king, high hearts that made top pair. And I just want to get some value from them. And if I bet something like $2 or $3 or $4 here, there's a chance that my opponent's like, they're trying to get thin value with king, queen. I'm going to just, mash the pot button. And I would elicit some sort of a bluffy spew. So given that, I don't love my bet sizing. They folded, but that's not really the fundamental thing. The main thing is I think I should have bet the turn. And on the river, maybe a different bet sizing. All right, we got some chat. Let's see. Cardiff Giant says, king high flush draw 4 ways is an easy fold. Yeah. Big aha moment for me is folding hands like king jack 7-4 double suited from big blind 4 ways because the flush draws are almost worthless. Right. And I assume Cardiff Giant is referring to like before the flop, right? We have like king jack 7-4 double suited, which we're like, oh, if someone raises, I'm totally defending the big blind. And then it goes call, call, and it's like, oh, great, I can win this big pot. It's like, no, drawing to a king high flush 4 ways, like you need that ace to come on the board so you have the nuts because multi-way out of position, especially a king high flush, second nut flush is just, if a lot of money goes in, it's not because you want it to go in, right? So when it is good, it's going to be good sometimes when you make the king high flush, but you're not going to be able to make a lot of money then. So, yeah, that's some very good knowledge that we're having dropped upon us. Kevin E. Poker says, I'm late, but I made it. Thank you for making it. Good luck and crush these fools. And then hopefully we have already crushed these fools since this review time. Yeah, crushing has already been completed. The Ethical Panda says 100% in response to the Cardiff Giants answer to their question. So yeah, I love having people ask questions from a position of not lack of understanding but curiosity from wanting to learn more, and I love having people who can answer them from a more authoritative standpoint than I can. I think that was along the lines of what I was saying, but that's like very coherent and specific and very helpful. So thank all of you. All right, let's some of these hands, maybe there will be some words to say from from wiser minds, or more developed PLO players. Ace 955. I had the idea that this was sort of like a sliver folds. Let's check out 5-5 rainbow. I think maybe there's just a lot of 5-5 ace rainbow that gets folded. Let's check it out. So I'm right and I'm wrong. Ace 9-5-5 rainbow is a fold. Ace 10-5-5 rainbow is a raise. However, any other card going with the 5 that's not a Broadway is a fold. So I'm going to sum that up here. Ace 9-5-5 rainbow is fold from button. Ace 5-5 rainbow is RFI from button with ace king through ace 10. 4-4 through deuce deuce. So basically, if we're rainbow with 5s, we need an ace and a Broadway, or we need a second pocket pair. And that's it. Period. Simple. Now we know that. Hopefully we'll remember. But I support the pre-flop decision I made. All right, and then here I fold this, and the question was like, single suited 7s. Can I play? I think like a king and a 10 suited, maybe. I don't know. One thing to be aware of also is in these games that play really loose, this isn't the worst type of table like that, and by worst I mean kind of best, but I've got 3 players at this table who clearly know where the fold button is, one who's not quite sure, and then one who's like, what do you mean fold? So at tables with like 3 or 4 players like that, having a suited king in your hand is gonna have less value than it is at tables where people are just like gonna know where the fold button is. So you're going to want some more stuff in your hand to go with that. Here I have some more stuff, but not that much stuff. So we're going to look at 7 single suited in the low jack. Yeah, and this just isn't close. Basically, we're going to need a second pair or ace X. So 7-7, yeah, 7-7, king 9 single suited is clear fold from low jack. And only RFI 7-7 single suited with ace X suited or 6-6 through 4-4. And there's like a few other things, but we'll leave it at that. Basically, if we have ace king and we're suited to the king, we can do it. But yeah, most of these sorts of hands we're going to fold. So I just wanted to double check that. The double checking has occurred. And then this one, I also thought like, this might be close, but I think it's a fold. These single suited 6s. However, I am on the button, and single suited 6s is a hard thing to say. And this is a raise, actually. Interesting that 10-9 6-6 is not a raise, and 10-8 6-6 is. 6-6 10-8 single suited is RFI from button. Good suit or bad suit. So no matter how it's suited, if it is suited, it's a raise. So I thought this might be a little tight. Oddly, 10-9 6-6 single suited is fold. And I guess that's, I don't know. That's just because maybe you don't have a lot of good flops. Maybe 10-8, if you flop the 6, you're going to have more. You know what? I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Basically, just recalibrating. Okay, next time on the button, we'll open this hand. And I think there's nothing about these players that make me feel like this is incorrect. All right, now we're going to be getting to some interesting spots, I think. Let's see. Ace, ace, jack, 8, suited to the ace, right? Well, whatever. There's a limp, we raise, and they call. And this is the flop. And I think maybe I want to bet here because I'm blocking top pair, or I'm blocking like jack 10, right? And I have diamonds, but I think checking back feels right. On the turn they checked, and I have these diamonds. Because the diamonds aren't really nutty, I think I should have checked back here. I checked and they bet, and I called, but I don't really like it that much. I think, like, I immediately regretted betting, right? And we're getting about 3-1 here, so I only need about 25% equity, but maybe it's less than that because I have some potential implied odds. So I don't think I need quite 25 because if an ace comes, I think I'm gonna win some money. And if a diamond comes and they just have a raw 10, I think they're gonna check a lot. So then that's more in the realm of that's not like implied odds. It's not really reverse implied odds. I think if I have like 20-ish% equity, it's probably going to be fine. Uh, 2 outs, that's what? That's like 5%. So I've got about probably around 5% to make a hand where I'm going to want to put stacks in. There's going to be another 10x the bet there. So 5% of the time, we're going to win 10 more blinds. That's their, or 10 more bets. That's like there being half of one in there. So it's more like we're getting 3.5 to 1, in which case we need like, what do we need? 22? I think 22 something like that. 23. Yeah, so that doesn't change it that much. The implied odds, because I hit an ace so rarely, the implied odds of hitting an ace aren't that great, right? If I hit an ace, they're high, but they're not, I'm not going to actually realize those that often. So let's launch the equity calculator, and I'm going to actually put in my opponent's exact hand. Let's see, I'm going to bring this up, and we'll go over here, and we'll put in Queen of Spades, 10 of Clubs, 5 of Spades, 3 of Spades. And so if they're going to give me a free showdown, so 22.5, so that's probably about right, because I do have these implied odds when I hit an ace. It's slightly less than, you know, the direct odds I need here. And I think if here, let me mark that. I had 22.5% equity on the turn against this hand. So I think I'm more the villain in this hand, fairly speaking. But yeah, I mean, a jack's good, an ace is good, a diamond's good. If a jack comes and they bet, I think I'm going to feel compelled to call. If a diamond comes and they bet, I might just fold that. So there's a chance that I'm going to get bluffed off some of my equity. I don't think there's a big chance that I'm going to lose a lot of money if I get there, but I'm not good. And of course, they could have had quad tens, and then when, you know, spoiler alert, I do make the second nuts on the river, they bet, and I jam, and they call it off with their, you know, bare 10, which, you know, should they do that? I think probably not. But yeah, I think check back turn, and against this size raise, if it was pot size, I think I'd just fold. But against this size raise, calling is optimistic, but probably not that far from break even, is my guess. But this kind of turn bet and call is not like how we get rich in Pot Limit Omaha. So I don't love that hand. I don't think it's great. All right, aces with a king 8. Oh yeah, this one. This one. All right, lean into the shame. Okay, I don't know. It checks to me. What's going on here? I'm blocking top pair. I'm blocking nut flush draw. I have aces. I'm not blocking any of the straight draws, but straight draws on a flush draw board aren't going to be feeling fantastic. However, this is a 3-card low flop, out of position, multi-way as the pre-flop raiser, and I think I'm just supposed to do a lot of checking here. If I'm doing betting, this seems like a pretty good hand to do it with that's not like the nut flush draw, a set. This seems like a decent sort of, it's not even a semi-bluff, it's like a equity denial bet, right? So I think there's an argument to be made for betting this combo. However, I was thinking I'm probably mostly going to check my range here. So the hands that I do bet are going to be hands like sets or combo draws, or aces with the spades, or maybe ace high spades with an 8 or a 7 or something like that. So I think checking this makes sense. They go full pot. So far what we had seen from this player, I think, was half potting with value, or no, half potting with some bluffs, or with a bluff, and potting with value. That doesn't mean that this has to be value. I am blocking 8-8 and I'm blocking 7-7. There's not really any good cards that can come though, right? I mean, I can hit an ace. There's two cards that give me the nuts. I can hit an 8, which feels pretty good, but not great. And if they have 7-7, I'm only going to have 6 outs to outdraw them because I have a pair of aces. Like, I'd rather not have a pair of aces if I turn an 8. And I just folded. And you know what? This feels like one of those spots where it's like, oh, am I giving up too much equity? Am I just being a big old nit here? And I kind of think, like, one thing I didn't mention is I have the ace of spades. So they're not semi-bluffing the nut flush draw, right? So that's going to weight them more towards value hands. Now I have the 8, which is going to block value hands. So it's kind of a little column A, little column B. But overall, their combination of made hands that have me crushed and semi-bluffs that are like 50-50, this feels a little bit like a slightly ahead, way behind spot where I also am out of position and have a high SPR, right? I mean, the SPR at the flop was like 11 or 10. So I think I like my fold actually now. I don't know. I'm very curious to hear more experienced opinions on whether, you know, folding aces on this board, just like check folding. If they half pot it, maybe I call. And if they check, I think there's some turns that, you know, I can play some poker on. But I'm okay with my fold. In this, you know, they bet multi-way, full pot, high SPR. All right, let's look at some more aces. These 3 ace hands happen within the span of 4 hands. So this is where I mean, crushing in terms of like results anyway. And not like crushing, but like, I don't know. If you look at big blinds per 100, the session was pretty good. All right, so there's a raise. I 3-bet it. I mostly wanted to know, like, is this around the type of hand that I might be flatting? So I'm going to look at cutoff versus MP. I think I flat aces less in the cutoff than on the button. I think we flop, you know, we do more on the button. Yeah, this is definitely not flatted there. If I look at button versus MP, let's look at single suited aces. Yeah, this isn't even close. This is a very clear 3-bet. And I mean, I knew 3-betting was at least fine, but I'm kind of trying to find the aces that are actually occasionally going to be flatted. And even rainbow, these are clearly a 3-bet in this spot. One more, we're going to look at button versus MP aces like these, but rainbow. Yeah, and then that's close, right? Ace 10-6 rainbow, it wants us to flat button versus hijack. But, you know, I throw in the 3-bet. Not too much to think about there. This one, okay, I had a gut shot, not to the nuts. I had a flush draw, not to the nuts. I had aces, pretty far from the nuts. And I'm blocking, you know, backdoor spades. So I'm not really blocking any of my opponent's value hands. And I'm blocking wraps and like combo wraps, which is nice. So maybe betting's not the worst. I would not mind getting it in at a 1.5 to 1 SPR with the player on my right, but the player across from me, I really, you know, we're at a 3 to 1 SPR. I don't think with this kind of flush draw. I did say at the time if I had the ace high flush draw, I believe I would bet this flop and I would be okay getting it in, but I did not have that. I checked it back, and then they half potted it. Oh yeah, this was weird. And then we have a fold. So I have aces. I have a flush draw. I have a gut shot. None of these are really to the nuts, but I had seen this player pot it a lot. So when they half potted it, I raised an eyebrow. And if they have a bear jack, it's similar to the previous situation. The difference here is that the other player check raised the turn. And here this player's just leading out, half pot on this kind of wet board. Like, they're going to have me crushed sometimes with like 8-8 or jack 8. I decided to go ahead and call because something kind of didn't feel right about this bet. Also, you know, I've got some equity if they, against like a jack, right? If they don't have a boat or something. And if they have 8-8, I still do have 4 outs. So the river's a 4. I'm blocking the straight. If they bet again, I probably just fold here, but they checked. And I thought, do I want to turn this into a bluff? Am I trying to get a jack to fold? I don't think so. Let's just take a showdown. I don't think like repping a straight here on a paired board makes any sense. And there was like nothing that I thought I'd really be repping by trying to bet here. And also my hand's just kind of too good, I think. And I checked, and they had this hand, which is bottom 2 pair on the flop. Okay, not so great turn for them. And a double gutter. And only the bottom end is to the nuts, although when they bet, none of it was to the nuts because the board was paired. So my aces and jacks beat their jacks and 8s and 5s on mine. So yeah, I'm okay with that one. There's just something about the turn bet that, you know, the other thing is I'm in position there. So the river is going to take place a little bit more on my terms. and we have a little bit more than a 1-to-1 SPR on the river. And if they like really had a hand they really wanted to get the money in with, I feel like maybe they bet more, right? A little bit more on the turn. I don't know. Let's see. I've got from Cardiff Giant. So perfect hand to check raise. Okay, that must be with regard to the previous hand, right? Let's go back one. This one. So we get to the flop, and I check, and then there's a bet and a fold, and I believe this is what, correct me if I'm wrong, Cardiff Giant is referring to. Perfect hand to check raise, blocking top pair and ace of spades. If you're going to check fold, would be better to bet yourself and fold to raise. Ace of spades is such an important card. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Like this hand felt weird because it felt like I didn't really want to bet, and I didn't really want to bet that much, but I do see how having the ace of spades and the 8 as well, it's just going to really block a lot of continue ranges. So maybe betting, I can deny a lot of equity here. Mostly people are going to be folding hands that I'm beating, but that's fine because they can have a fair amount of equity with those hands. If they're going to be folding smaller flush draws, I like it a little less with players like this or players like these who are the more loose passive, who I think they're going to draw to the jack high, queen high, king high flushes more. But I do understand how, from a theoretical view and probably from a practical view, that's going to be effective. Like, just that card it's a great card, right? On the flush draw board, having the nut flush draw blocker is just it's like the best card you can have. So yeah, if I bet and then they call and then a spade comes, then I can turn my hand into a bluff, right? And maybe get them to fold some 2-pair and some sets, and maybe they make a straight, but they're like, oh, they can have a flush. So that makes a lot of sense. And as a check raise, I think that's interesting, where I check, and then they're going to bet some hands that feel pretty good, but then when they get check raised, having the 8 means they're probably not going to have top set very often, probably not going to have top 2 that often, and they're not going to have the nut flush draw, so their equity is going to feel very questionable to them. And I'm a little hesitant against a player like this, but I think I underestimate how often kind of loose players are willing to fold when a lot of aggression goes in. So thank you for all of the comments on that hand. They're of use. Thank you. To Cardiff Giant. So we're gonna proceed, and there is a 3-minute delay between the chat and the review. At some point I might transition to doing more just straight up session reviews for the morning session, so I can do it in real time so that we can like have more of a conversation. So let me know if that would be more of an attractive format to anyone in the chat or in the comments on YouTube, I guess. Come by Twitch, check it out. It's fun live-ish, right? I mean, 3 minutes is not truly live, but it's close. All right, so this felt like maybe a little much, too much. King Jack 5-7, yeah, too much. So this is just too loose. King Jack 7-5 single suited is, what is that color? Is so we'll say bad suit is fold from small blind. Good suit is limp fold from small blind. So basically, if I was suited to the king, I'm supposed to limp in and then fold to a raise. I find this probably isn't a strategy that I'm going to employ right now at these stakes. With this rake, I mean, this rake's even worse than the micro stakes rake in the pre-flop matrix, right? The micro stakes rake in the pre-flop matrix is for like some poker stars rake, which is pretty bad, but this is worse. So I'm just not implementing a small blind limping strategy or open limping strategy. I am over limping some hands, but even that needs a lot of refinement. So yeah, this is just, I just think I should have folded this hand. It's a little too loose. I took it down, whatever. Results do not dictate what we should or shouldn't do. So yeah, that's it for the session review. That's it for the session. Thank you all so much for watching here on Twitch and over here on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, you can subscribe, you can like, And you can ask questions about the hands in the chat. Just type in the 4 hole cards and timestamp, and I'll get back to you soon. Have an excellent rest of your week. Cheers. So, if you're here on Twitch, then we are going to plan a raid. Let's see, timer. I imagine Kevin is streaming, and we'll just head on over for some further Pot Limit Omaha goodness. Let's go raid channel. Let's see. Yes, the stream is going there.